Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today we are going to be reviewing a very interesting racing chronograph, actually two racing chronographs. Now, of course, before I get into it, I've got to do my wristwatch check, and today I'm wearing my little Zenith manual wind. This is a vintage piece I picked up recently. I've still got to review this one. It was lovingly restored by a friend of mine, a UK watchmaker. And as you can see, it's very reminiscent of the Explorer, the Rolex Explorer, but I'm happy that it's a Zenith too, because it's a brand I deeply admire. And what is fantastic, it is performing impeccably well, considering it's about almost 3 times my age. But that's the wonderful thing about these calibers of Zenith movements, the manual winds. I forget the caliber, the precise. I'll cover it all in the full review, but they were really built well and absolute troopers. So I'm just chuffed to bits, and stay tuned for the full review. Anyway, before I rabbit on far too much about Zenith, let's cover another Swiss brand, and that is Straton. So let's change perspectives and have a closer look. Today we are reviewing the latest watch from Straton. Now, Straton Watch Company is a watch company based in Zurich in Switzerland and was founded by my good friend Kyle, and Kyle has been a long-time supporter of the show. Now, this is of course a micro-brand company. If you can't tell already, Kyle is very much a car enthusiast, an automobile enthusiast, classic racing cars and all the rest of it. Not only does he love cars, he obviously loves watches. So today we're taking a look at his latest release. That I believe this is on Kickstarter as we speak, although if you're watching this in the future, it's probably been released already. So I'm very, very lucky and feel quite honored to review the prototypes of his latest watch. Now, you guys know, as you see here, these are two of the latest models, and this is called the Syncro, and basically comes in 2 sizes. We have the automatic version, and then of course a smaller quartz version. Now, I've reviewed Kyle's watches before. In fact, he was kind enough to even give me a watch as a gift, and this is the Straton Curve, which I absolutely adore. And guys, if you missed the review of this, check out, I'll put a link up there so you can have a look back. So I've included the Curve just to give a reference and show you the progression of these watches. Now, the Syncro, as I mentioned, comes in 2 sizes. The automatic is in 44mm diameter, and the Quartz is in a slightly smaller 40mm diameter, and you can already tell which one I like more. However, there's some very interesting features in the automatic, which we'll get to in just a moment. So the case is entirely stainless steel. It is 316L surgical grade, of course, and there is a version, I believe, with black DLC. That's diamond-like carbon coating, which is also actually kind of highlights a point I really like about this brand, is that you can specify when you order, the same way they did with the Curve. You can order if you want a date, if a complication. This one has no date. The automatic has the date there at 6 o'clock, as you can see. You can specify the colors. There's a really wide range of colors, and one thing I must say that I do love about Straton is the cases they come in. Kyle did away with overcomplicated cases. They're big, they're bulky, sometimes they're a pain to store, but you get a beautifully signed with the Straton S, of course, case, and you always get extra NATOs, and depending if you go for the leather one or the bracelet options, even a little toolbar there, spring toolbar, the works. Really nice attention to detail. Even the manual is minimal. You just get a little booklet illustrating how it works. What I love is the amount of accessorization that goes into the brand. I mean, you can buy duffel bags, there are racing gloves to accompany your watches, and a really cool range of NATO straps, all bright colors. I'm not a racing car enthusiast, even though I absolutely adore his watches, but they make me excited, and it's undoubtedly you can see the inspiration and the design elements that's gone into these watches from these classic cars. So inside the Quartz we have the Seiko VK64. Now this is a Mecha Quartz hybrid. It's incredibly accurate. Also we get quite a nice fifth of a second sweep to the seconds hand on the main chronograph, and these things have an amazing accuracy of about plus minus I think it's about 20 seconds per month, which is phenomenal. What is great about the VK64 is you got 3 years of battery life. Also, they're incredibly robust. I mean, shock resistant. They're just solid performance. If we have a look at the back of the Quartz version, we have his what's become pretty much cool feature, standard feature of the Stratons, and that is his case backs, or in terms of the curve itself, was inspired actually by the spokes of a car wheel, which is really cool. However, that changes quite dramatically with the automatic version, that he's now included a display back, which we'll get into in just a moment. With both watches we get 200 meters water resistance, screw down crowns of course. Now the Syncro is also a little bit more involved in many areas. The case has a little bit more detail. We see the brushing on the side, and then these beveled edges, almost like a kind of Scotia groove there. And this time we do have the bezel on the outside. Now at the moment it is bi-directional, it's 120 click. I believe the final ones will be unidirectional. But what's really nice is they've done them, I'm not sure if they're Bakelite, but these beautiful kind of multi-layered bezels that really are so typical in that period. I adore them. And here we have the two variations, one with the checkered, and then the next one with the block pattern there. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean the way they play with light. Also we get double domed sapphire glass, which is just fantastic. Look at the way it distorts there. Really cool, and just continues that retro feel. But not only do the bezels look fantastic, there's actually lume in them, and they have embedded C3 superluminova. The same with the hands and the markers. In fact, while we're at it, let's quickly have a look at the lume shot. As you can see, the lume is very responsive and bright. That typical C3 superluminova that we all know and love so well. On the left is the checkered pattern, and on the right is the block pattern of the Quartz. The block has the added bonus of the increments also loomed up, which is just phenomenal. The automatic is just as nice. They both have the arrow tip at the 12. Just a really nice feature, and something you don't see typically these days with bezels, but it's a nice touch and very typical of the 70s in particular. Anyway, outstanding lume, very bright, very responsive. Despite the small applied indices, it is very bright and easy to read. Anyway, let's take it back to the studio. So as you can see, the automatic here comes on a beautiful racing leather strap, very substantial, nicely padded out and thick. Of course, genuine leather, signed, and Carla's told me that they're going to be a little bit shorter. I believe this one on the prototype was a little bit too long. We get, of course, a signed buckle and a whole plethora of fantastic NATO straps that I showed you earlier in the case. But I must admit, the one that really takes my fancy is their mesh bracelets. They're also signed beautifully, and these are very simple to adjust. You just pop that up and you can slide it to get a really nice, precise fit. So let's have a close-up look at that dial. Now it does vary from the dial colors, also the color of the chapter ring. Sub-dials vary. There are polar versions, there are blue dials, there are black dials. This particular one on the Quartz is this beautiful silver. They have different textures. Really cool amount of variation. And I love how the sub-dials are framed. It looks exactly like a dashboard of a racing car. And then of course we have the date window at the 6 o'clock. We get beautiful faceted hands, also applied markers, and of course the Straton logo. And I love the amount of detail on the dial, that very precise minute and seconds track that borders the sloping chapter ring with the tetrametric scale. I love how they match the text in orange with the hands and that little line. That's something that's consistent with all their watches. Now this is the automatic version and probably the most interesting of the two, simply because of the choice of the movement. Inside we have the Seiko NE88, which is Seiko's flagship automatic chronograph movement, and it's usually found in higher end Seikos, and is of course a vertical clutch that eliminates that jumping seconds hand when you start the chronograph. Not only that, it has the column wheel in it, and I think it's a really promising alternative to your standard 7750 that we see all too often at this kind of price range. It has a triple tipped hammer that simultaneously and instantly resets all the sub-dial counters back to 0. You get that Seiko reliability, you get that Seiko sturdiness. It's a 34 joule movement and the power reserve is about 45 hours. So we have, of course, a 30-minute sub-dial on the left, and on the right we have the seconds for the main time. I'm going to reset, so you'll see it reset hopefully. Boom. Very, very efficient, very responsive. I mean, I just click it and it goes. There's no jumpiness. It's a great chronograph movement. I got to say, out of the two bezels, I really like the checkered version. I think it's a lot more racing, a lot more interesting. I love the fact there's lumen. It's so cool. And it's fun, you know, that's what it's all about. And they're not that expensive. It does have striking resemblances to the Tudor Monte Carlo, but at the same time I think the bezel sets it apart and gives it a strong identity of its own. Okay, so let's quickly do a wrist shot. This is the 40mm version. Now what's really nice is the adjustability of this. You really get a comfy, reassuring fit, and the extra part of the mesh just goes underneath and just reinforces the fit, which I really like, and it's very comfortable. Interestingly, they are both 130 grams in weight, even though the smaller has the mesh, but of course the automatic is going to weigh more because it's quite substantially larger, and of course the weight of that movement. Now my only slight bit of critique is because of that double dome and quite a thick case. They both are the same height. They're about 14.9, just shy of 15 millimeters, which I think is a little bit too much. It's excusable in the automatic version because of course we have quite a complex movement in there, but with the Quartz it would have been nice to see it a little bit thinner, something that maybe even the curve suffered from a little bit. But actually with this particular case, I think that's what makes it so charming, is this unusual, quite tall case, and having the crystal, its placement in the case like this, you know, it doesn't really have a bezel because of this Tourneau style case. However, on this, the bezel and everything, it sits on top. Then of course we have the double domed crystal as well, so it does sit a little bit tall. Both of them do. Let's just try on the larger 44mm version so you can see what that looks like on my tiny little wrist. Okay, and there is the 44mm version. Actually, it's not that huge, mainly because the lug width from lug to lug is about 49mm. It's not that huge. I think it's about 46 on the smaller one. Although the height is, I think, a little bit more apparent, even though they are the same. But yeah, it's not that big. But I think what is fantastic is there are two versions here. It's a shame there's no automatic version in the smaller size. I'd probably even consider it. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Let's take it back to the studio and summarize the watch. Let's go through the positives and negatives. Well, undoubtedly, the best thing about this watch is you get that classic 70s racing watch feel without having to pay a kidney for it. Because let's face it, a lot of the classic Hoyers and a lot of watches of that period are frightfully expensive. So you get something that's bang up to date. Now, I'm not going to give a precise price, because obviously at the time of recording this video it hasn't been released yet and prices do fluctuate. However, I know roughly the price it's going for, and I think it's good value for money. Secondly, I've got to say, I love the fun, lively, the colors, the variety in the range, and that's another big positive, is the sheer amount of choice you get. I think there are 10 combinations in general with the 2 types of sizes. I love that. I tend to feel sometimes with the micro brands, it's a bit of an overcrowded market, but Straton certainly offers something different and something refreshing and fun, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Something I would like to highlight is I do love that, and one of my favorite features apart from the bezel of course, is that second hand to the main chronograph, that tapered baton. Very indicative of the 70s. You'll see it in a lot of vintage Omegas. I saw one just the other day in a dynamic and a chronograph I was looking at. And also I must point out something I did neglect to mention, the lug width. On the smaller Quartz 40mm diameter version, it is 20mm lug width, and on the larger it's 22. And I think both of those sizes complement the size of the case perfectly. Also, it's got to be said, the choice of the movement in the automatic, I love it. The NE88 is a fantastic column wheel chronograph movement from Syncro. It operates at 28,800 vibrations an hour. I neglected to mention as well, it is hackable and does have a hand winding. It's a solid performer. I was getting about 7 seconds out of it. I think it's a great choice because it keeps the costs down, but at the same time offers a great mechanical chronograph that is very difficult to beat and a serious threat to the 7750. Watch geeks will really appreciate the column wheel, and at the same time it performs and is very robust. I love it. It also has a little bit of decoration, the Côte de Génie finishing and diamond cut edges, which I think is sufficient for this price range. Okay, let's move on to negatives. Well, first of all, and you're probably gonna roll your eyes at this because I tend to say it a hell of a lot, I do find the large one too large. Now, it's great if you have a bigger wrist, fantastic. However, it's not in keeping with its retro style, I feel. And if you look at, 9 out of 10 of the iconic classic watches, most of them are under 40mm, probably with the exception of another great racing watch, the Speedmaster, of course, and that is at 42, the professional at least. This one is 44. I think it's a little bit clumsy, the larger size. When you make a watch smaller, you make it a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more understated. Yeah, it may lack in presence. This oversized watch trend is gonna end, and when it is gonna end, the 40 I think is the sweet spot for a lot of watches, and trust me, look at all the iconic watches. I also think it's too tall. I said this about the Planet Ocean just the other day. Again, a little bit clumsy. Yeah, it's great that it's got 200 meters water resistance, but you could sacrifice that. And also, if you do look at the back, there's plenty of space there. I think it could have been smaller. Again, this is just my personal taste and preferences, but trust me, it's got so much going for it. I just wish it was a tiny bit thinner and a little bit smaller in general scale. 100 meters water resistance would have been fine, but it is cool that it has such a high rating. Also, is the display back needed? Perhaps you could sacrifice some of that thickness with getting rid of the display back. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't really see the column wheel, you can't really see what the movement has to offer, and also it's not that highly decorated. I think it's enough just to say, you got that movement in there. Again, this is personal taste, but I've got to be honest, I've got to say this. That movement is perfectly capable of being housed in a smaller case. Just look at this tiny little, I think this is the 33mm Zenith. Yes, okay, it's too small for a lot of people, but for me, I love it, and I think it has an understated class to it that I think is what I'm looking for in the Rolex Explorer. That's why I'm so obsessed with this dial layout at the moment. But anyway, again, totally going off on a tangent, but trust me, smaller is better. as long as it's not too small, obviously. And lastly, I think the finishing. Some of the transitions aren't as nice as they could have been. I understand, you know, we got to keep costs down, otherwise, you know, these kind of things really do push up the cost of a watch. Again, very nitpicking, and you really have to look at it closely. It's not even noticeable. It's just, I think I've been spoiled a bit with all the watches I've had access to, and I've got to say these things. But at the end of the day, guys, this is a beautifully designed watch, and I've got to take my hat off to Kyle, because designing a watch is no easy task. I've tried it before and failed miserably. Even my project to mod a SKX, even that was expensive, you know, so I can only imagine the costs and difficulty of going into this. It's very easy to criticize something, but it takes a hell of a lot to make something, you know, dreams come true. And I think this is an outstanding watch, and I really do wish Kyle the best of luck with his Kickstarter campaign. I feel he's added another, you know, really strong offering to his lineup already. I adore my little curve. I've got to say, I still prefer my curve over the Syncro, but you know, that's just personal taste. Okay guys, so I'm gonna leave it there. Please don't forget to add your thoughts, queries, questions, opinions, all the rest of it down in the comments below. I really do appreciate your feedback. Massive thank you to my good friend Kyle for his loyal support of the channel, and also honoring me with this first look at his new watch. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.